It's the Boomer Music Experience, and it's our May show, 2024. And I sort of forced my friend Randy Helmo to be ready for. I wanted to talk about 1971. It's a great year. My wife was born that year, so number one, there you go.
Very
But
nice.
the music of that year is phenomenal, and it seems
Mhm.
like it was probably like that turning point in a lot of directions for music. And to be honest with you, Randy, it's just, I always, if I'm going to put on a certain year's music, that's the year I go to every time, 1971. I don't know why, but I just love the music from that era because there is such a diversity in it too. I mean, you got everything from John Denver to the Osmonds to Led Zeppelin to John Lennon to Janis
Mhm.
Joplin to James Taylor.
Mhm.
It's the Temptations. It's just a great big mess of fun music. That's what I love about it.
Very
How about
true,
you?
Dave. Very, very true. And yeah, looking back at the year 1971 in music, we can see quite a diversity and mixture as you mentioned, musical styles and artists, different genres. Um, a lot of the classics like, well, Maggie May, Rod Stewart,
Yep.
John Lennon.
Yeah,
John
there it is.
Lennon, imagine. There we go. Actually, if I could share it with the audience just for 2 seconds, Dave, I'm going to put John Lennon's glasses on here.
Folks, are you ready for this? Here he goes. Drum roll, please. So there he is. Now, he can't see anything, but he looks super cool, doesn't he? The Lennon glasses.
There we
So
go.
our co-host, Randy
Oh,
Elmo,
dear.
he gets into it. Whatever I offer up for a theme, he goes and he gets into it, enjoys it. The music of that year, the Beatles had just broken up. They were all coming out with solo albums.
Hmm.
It was kind of a turning point, wasn't it, for music?
Definitely was the turning point. As we had mentioned, of course, late in December of 1971, John Lennon, Imagine, huge song for him. Each of the Beatles basically went their own separate way. Sir Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney, they had quite a good tune there. George Harrison, he started out on a solo career. So we can see here from the Beatles, and of course, their mega hit before they split up, broke off, was May of 1970, The Long and Winding Road. From there, they each departed and had terrific solo careers.
It really it's incredible. Like Harrison's, I think it was a double album, All Things Must Pass, came out, and it's all this music that he had been keeping, and all of a sudden that's on the charts. And you got, I think Ringo had a release that year as well.
Yeah.
But it was just, I think they sort of, the Beatles were so strong for so long, same with the Stones, which still are, but they opened that gate for different types of innovation in music. And then you start to see it. I mean, let's talk for just a second about like Motown's still huge. Like
Oh, yes.
1971, you got the Temptations.
Absolutely. Yeah. Marvin Gaye.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Marvin Gaye, great call on that one. Exactly. So all of a sudden there's all these different textures of music coming together, and people of that era. I mean, I got to ask you this because 1971, did you understand at that point what a magical year it was in music, or were you just like, oh wow, it's just another hit? Like it must have seemed like every week there was something new out.
Oh, absolutely, Dave. It At first, the first half of 1971, okay, well, it's a good year for music, but then as we got more into the middle of the year to the end of the year in 1971, I could really feel a strong presence that this is a major turning point in diversity for the different types of musical styles and the artists that would come along to form the music of 1971 that became very crucial down through the years, right up even to current music, has been influenced by 1971 and all the songs and the different genres and cultural movements that were expressed during that year are very much a part of us and our music today. Wouldn't you agree, Dave?
Totally agree. And then you look at like another aspect of that is Carole King is hitting it huge, breaking all kinds of barriers,
Mm-hmm.
stepping forward right into the role that, a lot of female superstars look back at her as one of those turning points in that music history.
Absolutely.
and 1970, 1971, when Carole King's all of a sudden breaking through and Tapestry's
Mhm.
just blowing up everywhere.
Oh,
That
yeah.
that's another aspect of that year, right? That took on a different meaning, didn't it, throughout music?
It sure did. And with the new artists, new groups, for example, the Carpenters,
Yeah.
Richard and Karen Carpenter, they had 3 songs in the top 100 songs for 1971, which was the most of any artist in 1971. And I just want to point out, okay, Superstar, but For All We Know, great song. This song really accentuates Karen Carpenter's voice, more of a low baritone, and it is such a unique song. One of my favorites, indeed, by the Carpenters, amongst many. But For All We Know, if to our audience, if you get a chance to listen to that, listen carefully to Karen's voice. It is very unique, and there's no artist to this day that has come along to really duplicate her voice, not even close.
Do you think with the Carpenters, and I want to throw this at you and get your thoughts on it because I know you're a huge fan. Was their music at that time very soothing? Was it because of all the uproar that had gone on in the 60s and just the changing of the guard in the 70s? Was it a very calming music for people, do you think? I mean, when I listen to the Carpenters, it's very relaxing.
Yes,
Is that
very much
what they
indeed.
were going for? Like, that's another aspect of music of that era, correct?
Hmm. It was Richard and Karen. They basically were focused entirely on easy listening music, not background music, but just easy listening, soft rock. And once again, at the airport, when I was at Toronto International, got a chance to meet Richard and Karen Carpenter. I had won a radio contest, CFRB, during those years, and got a chance to see Richard and Karen Carpenter perform. But also, I had an opportunity to go backstage with them. And Karen, I'll tell you, she was one sweet gal.
Amazing.
Really
I didn't
nice.
know that story. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, Richard and Karen. Yeah.
And that probably shows too why you're so. I mean, you really appreciate the Carpenters, and I do too. But I mean, you really do beyond what the normal person would because you've met them,
Mhm.
you understand them, you know
Yeah.
who they are and what they were.
Yeah. Really, really nice couple. Um, so many groups got their breakthrough in 1971. Uh, our former topic there, David Gates and Bread.
Yeah, really.
If
Yeah.
uh, Good group there. They had lots of hit music there in the 70s, but 1971 was the focal point. Look at Sir Elton John. He started his career in 1971 with Your Song.
Oh
Like,
man.
wow,
Like, well, you
man.
look at that. Let's talk about that for a sec too, because you just mentioned the Carpenters,
Hmm.
and then you mentioned Bread, but then you look at like who else was out that year? James Taylor. You've Got a Friend.
Hmm.
Bread, like you just said, Elton John.
Yeah,
There's that soft bed of music right there with those three artists. I mean,
that's
you
right.
could even throw the Bee Gees in there. How Do You Mend a Broken Heart? Right? That
Yes,
very
absolutely.
very subtle undertone of music
Hmm.
that was coming through in that area, and that's just another dimension. I think when we did our show on Bread last month, folks, check it out from
Hmm.
my music experience.
Yeah.
But when we did that one too, I did not realize, and I'll reiterate this,
Hmm.
how much good music they put out. It just hit me. I was like, oh my goodness. Like I knew all
Hmm.
these songs, but I didn't realize that was Bread, at the time you
Yeah.
start thinking about it.
Yeah.
uh and something like Bill Withers, right? Ain't No Sunshine.
Yes.
It
Ain't
just
no
sticks
sunshine.
around. That song just continues, right?
Oh yeah, and it's a classic. It'll be around forever. Ain't no sunshine. Well, we had lots of sunshine yesterday. Thank goodness at the last minutes, and we
Oh,
saw a
yeah.
wonderful solar eclipse. Ain't no sunshine. We saw lots of it.
And then you look at Joan Baez doing The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. Like
Dixie down.
I mean, here we go again, right? It's just that those subtle undertones, and then we flip the script and we hear Janis Joplin,
Hmm.
right? Me and Bobby McGee,
Me
written
and
by
Bobby McGee,
Chris
Chris
Christopherson.
Christopherson. Yeah.
All of a sudden, she's already been big, but now that's her signature song, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that pole vaulted her from um, a classic artist to a superstar. Really, really well done. Again, you can go on and on. Don McLean, American Pie.
Yeah, there you
Like
go.
that's that song there that will live forever. Also, it's almost like a national anthem
Yeah.
to some degree. Watching Scotty grow. Goldsboro, still very active in 1971. He came on the scene during the mid 60s. But, and look at the crooner, Perry Como. It's impossible. Wow.
You got the Jackson Five, you've got the Nitty
Yeah.
Gritty Dirt Band doing Mr. Bojangles. Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
Right on.
and one of my favorite songs of that year,
Mhm.
I know we always end up going back to this, but he's one of my
Mhm.
favorites. If You Could Read My Mind, Mr. Gordon Lightfoot, right?
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
fits
Gordon
right
Lightfoot,
in there.
that was
And
his breakout year in 1971. And he was pole vaulted from uh, um, like a good Canadian artist again to superstar status. And he got his start in 1971, and he gave us a lot of great songs, a lot of good memories. Gordon Lightfoot.
yeah, and
Good
then you,
choice. Good choice, Dave.
Carly Simon,
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Helen Reddy, Aretha Franklin,
Hmm.
the Partridge Family, like Ike and Tina Turner, Proud Mary,
Oh, yes.
1970. Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And I know one of your super groups that had a big hit in 1971 that sort of started them on the way is Chicago.
Yes. Hmm. Yep, Peter Cetera in Chicago. And even when Peter broke off with Chicago, Chicago was still performing, incidentally. Um, Peter Cetera had a wonderful solo career too. And he did a number of duets with the various female artists. He was great. But when you listen to the original Chicago,
Yep.
Chicago Transit Authority, the first album they brought out, you can hear Peter Cetera's voice as lead vocal. And his voice is very unique and blends in very well with the rest of the Chicago players. Um, his voice is it's so different, but it's great.
And you got, yeah, it's just one of those voices, right? One of those sounds. And we got to
Mhm.
remember another great Canadian band at the time, the Stampeders,
That's right. Yeah.
Sweet City Woman, right? I
Sweet
mean,
City Woman.
why?
Yeah.
Another classic. And we gotta bring it up because one of a huge hit that year for Olivia Newton-John.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that sort of got her ball rolling again. Well, she was already a
Mhm.
star, but this really catapulted her, didn't it?
It certainly did, Dave. Yeah. And from there, Olivia had a lot of mega, mega hits. And these weren't just like, okay, she's in the top 100. These were gold records. These were platinum records. And well, even 1983, look at the song Physical, which I think was her very best upbeat song ever. And it's also uh, almost like an anthem for some of these dance groups that have specific dance routines.
Yeah.
Also, if you're like many of the dances I've DJ'd, physical gets requested. Guaranteed. Out on the dance floor is always packed, jam packed. It's
And
great.
I can't even imagine being a DJ back in 1971 working at a radio station. You just couldn't miss, right? How could you
That's
miss?
right. Yeah.
Every song you put on was probably, known.
Yeah.
And probably, maybe perhaps we should look at that. That's another story for another day.
Yeah.
At what point did radio peak? Musically, like you got to wonder,
Hmm.
right? Like when
That's
you
right.
see this year and you're looking at the theme from Shaft,
Yeah.
sorry. I
Right on.
mean, Riders on the Storm by the Doors
The
that
Doors.
year.
Yeah. And also that year too, sadly, we did lose Jim Morrison.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
And Love Her Madly too by the Doors, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Neil Diamond, Wilson
Yes.
Pickett.
Hmm.
Like,
Fantastic.
where does it end? It doesn't. It just doesn't that year. It's the Who won't get fooled again.
Yeah. It was a real focal point in the direction that music would go down the road. And 1971 was really, uh, it was really a crucial year for pop music.
I agree. And then, it was late in 71 when Zeppelin 4 came out, but this, it's more of a 72 album, but it just throws things again, right? Because
Mhm.
all of a sudden they explode. And I think it's a lot due to what you were seeing with all the music, right? Like it was just, there was so many different genres pulling, right? Within that
Absolutely.
pop world, rock and
Mhm.
roll world. And then all of a sudden another explosion with Zeppelin coming out. And
Mhm.
it's kind of neat when you look at it all now. We have this opportunity to look back and see it and understand
Mhm.
how fortunate we were to be listening. I was just a kid, but it's amazing how many of these songs you grew up with,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly right, Dave. Absolutely. It's 71. It was a serious focal turning point in music.
A lot of the music too in that era was telling you something. It
Mhm.
had a, I mean, it might have been a love story, it might have
Mhm.
been political, it might have been self-reflective, but
Mhm.
a lot of like Cat Stevens' Wild World came out,
Right on. Yeah.
and you know what I mean. Like everything had a perspective. It seemed in a lot of the music of that day. I mean, not everything. Don't get me wrong, but
Mhm.
was it making your generation think? Was it challenging you to understand what they were talking about? Like, let's talk a bit about that in that era, because like
Mhm.
you were a young man, Randy, in those days. So let's talk for a minute about what that
Well, yeah, I think I was a little younger, you know.
you you're hearing Marvin Gaye and you're
Yes.
hearing, all this music. Is it
Yeah.
would
What's going on?
right, exactly. What's going
Yeah.
on around you in your community that you hang out with listening to this music? Like, are you guys going, what's he talking about? What
Mhm.
should we be doing? Like, was that, I have to ask, was that in you at that time? Were you looking for answers?
Oh, absolutely. First and foremost, Dave, we listen very carefully to the lyrics of each of the songs, all these different new artists coming on, the culturism of the songs based with the connection of the lyrics, um, like unbelievable. Sir Elton John, Carly Simon,
Yeah.
just to mention a few. So many artists exploded onto the rock scene in 1971, but you have to add into that also the diversity of the musical styles.
Yeah.
And each of these new artists gave us something unique and different in their songs. Incredible.
Were the record companies, I got to ask, because just looking at the year, was the record companies more open to diversity in music at that time than they are today?
Absolutely. No question about it. The record companies at that time that were huge. Oh, I could go right on down the list, but just off the top of my head, Decca Records
Yeah.
from the 60s continued on into the 70s, Columbia Records, um,
Motown.
Motown, definitely Motown, um, Epic Records. Epic Records, one of the stars of the 1960s, Bobby Vinton. His all of his songs were put out by Epic Records, another great record company. So here we have the compilation of different record companies coming together in their own unique way to sponsor their particular artist or rock group.
But I think too, back then they might have been looking for the next big thing. The Beatles had broke up. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
Like everybody, I'm sure every record company was searching the backwoods trying to find that next big thing. So maybe that helped the diversity of music, because all of a sudden
Hmm.
they're giving everything a listen, right? They're like, well, wait, here, listen to this sound, right?
That's right.
Do you think that happened at that point to get such a diversity of music out?
Oh, definitely, absolutely. And with the Beatles, case in point here, Dave, um, they went their separate ways, like Sir Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney, John Lennon, of course, the Plastic Ono Band, George Harrison. And what had happened there in the record companies, they formed their own record company, Apple Records.
Yeah.
And I can still see the apples spinning on the turntables for Apple Records for George Harrison and Sir Paul McCartney. And so, yeah, and the Beatles were not afraid to come forth with a new name for a record company, and they did it very professionally.
It's just, yeah, it's a commentary to what the diversity of things that were changing in in the music world, and obviously on outside the music world, everything else was changing as well. The 71 was a big year all the way around.
Mhm.
But I'm kind of, because you're coming of age at 71, you're becoming a young man too. You're starting to like you said, in your generation of baby boomers,
Mhm.
that must have been one of those critical years where music just took on a whole new meaning for your life.
Oh, definitely, Dave. It was indeed a pivotal year, major, big time, 1971.
I don't
Oh,
want to
yes.
I don't want to pigeonhole you, but is there any one song in particular that stood out to you that you just took your breath away? You went, wow.
Yes, in fact, well, there's many for
That's what I
1971,
mean.
but I've got to go back to my crooner, my crooner Perry Como,
Oh, wow.
and I would say from 1971, his song "It's Impossible." The lyrics to this song really get a chance to listen to that song.
I'll write it down.
It is unbelievable. Perry Como, "It's Impossible." Great song. He one of the crooners of the early 50s through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. That would be my favorite song from 1971, amongst many others, but that goes right to the top of the list. How about yourself, Dave?
Well, I don't know, because every time I think I have one,
Hmm.
right, and then I'm like, oh, I'm a big George Harrison fan, but
Hmm.
and then I look at Lennon and
Oh, yes, John
Imagine,
Lennon.
and it kind of just takes me away, because I think that song talks so much about what he perceived society should be at that time, right?
Hmm. Correct.
And I think that
Absolutely correct.
kind of opened the door for thinking beyond. And there, and for me, that probably had a little bit more growing up and hearing that song
Hmm.
a lot. You kind of went, wow, there was a message here. How did we miss that, right? Or
Hmm.
and who it's just one of those songs that I think I can relate to a little bit that way, for sure. And
Hmm.
there's just so much stuff came out. Like,
Oh,
we didn't even bring
absolutely.
up Three Dog Night, Joy to the World. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right on. And
uh,
speaking of that, Dave, as you mentioned that song, of all the top 100 songs of 1971, was the number one song.
wow.
Three Dog Night, Joy to the World. I still get many requests for that on the dance floor, be it weddings, fundraisers, whatever. That's a classic.
And I do believe another song that when you said that to me, that really had an impact, and I think it came out that year. I'm going to have to double check, with Signs, 5-man electrical band.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I think that came out that year as well. And
Yes, it did. Yeah.
that
Song.
song to me just I always, I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of encapsulated a lot of things, didn't it?
Oh, it did. It's a real fun song. Signs,
Yeah.
5-man electrical band. Wow.
And there's the Canadian content in there too.
Definitely.
I always think that those words probably meant so much to a lot of folks in that era. When they heard that song, they were like, yeah, that's for me. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, too, the Partridge Family.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about
Partridge
them. Yeah.
Family. Good group. They uh, they really gelled together well with any of the songs that they sung.
Yeah.
And of course, David Cassidy,
Yeah.
he's a natural,
Yeah.
but really, really good. One song that Donny Osmond put out, it was a hit record for him, Go Away Little Girl.
Yeah.
But that song was originally sung by Steve Lawrence. We lost Steve Lawrence about 6 weeks ago.
Oh.
From April of 1963, Steve Lawrence put out Go Away Little Girl, and that was a gold record within 4 weeks after it was released. Solid gold. And what I'd like our audience to do, Dave, compare the two songs. Let us know what you think. Go Away Little Girl. Do you like Donny Osmond's version better, or the original version by Steve Lawrence? Just a thought.
Yeah, I'll have to. I mean, I know Donny Osmond's will have to give Steve Lawrence's version definitely a listen to make that. They're probably both equally great, to be honest with you, but I definitely will. Another one that I wanted to bring up that I didn't realize was this old was Rare Earth.
Oh
I
yes,
just want to celebrate.
I want to celebrate,
I thought
celebrate,
that
and
was like
dance
an
to the
80s
music.
song. You know what I mean? When
Oh
I seen it, I'm like, really? 71? Holy
yeah,
smokes, right?
and what an upbeat, just a feel good upbeat song. Celebrate, dance to the music. Rare Earth. Wow, that's
Yeah,
an
and the horns in
automatic
that one are great
dance
too.
floor. Yeah,
And
automatic dance floor filler. Go
we
ahead.
already talked about it, but I want to bring it up again because Cat Stevens is one of my favorite. And when you
Oh
talk
yes.
about Wild World, right?
Yeah.
Right then and there in 71, obviously he was starting to sow his oats and finding his way too. And
hmm
just him, James Taylor, Carly Simon, they all
Yeah.
sort of came out of that era. I think
hmm
they all played the Troubadour in LA at one point. You know what I mean? Like I think
Exactly.
that's kind of that's Rare Earth right there, right?
Right on. Absolutely. And something I didn't know about Cat Stevens, and actually I played it last night at our sing along group. Cat Stevens, Morning Has Broken.
Yeah.
That song, it's light, soft rock, but it's also hymnal.
Yeah, a
It's a
lot of his
hymn.
stuff is.
The lyrics
Yeah.
on that particular song. And so I played that last night, and 99% of the people there last night knew the words by heart.
Yeah.
Cat Stevens, Morning Has Broken. To our audience, if you've never heard that song before, um, please go to YouTube. Cat Stevens, Morning Has Broken. Listen carefully to the lyrics. It'll blow your mind.
I read a book on him about 2 years ago.
hmm
Really interesting. And a lot of his stuff was old biblical stuff that he had read,
Yes,
he was
indeed.
based on. And he just put a new twist on it, right? And I
Mhm.
give him credit. Like, that's a crazy incredible what he was able to do.
Right on. Yep.
And yeah, just one of those characters that you don't forget the music. That's for sure. It lives on and on and on.
hmm
It I don't know what to tell you, man. Every time I look at this, it's like I just want to go play a whole pile of this music, go dig out the vinyl, and because I have some of these, and they're just from that era, and it just doesn't get any better.
hmm Well, as I mentioned too, Dave, with 1971, there was a specific wedding song that came out. I still get requests to have this played as a first dance at weddings, still,
Wow.
believe it or not. And that song was by Paul Stuckey of Peter, Paul, and Mary,
Yeah.
and he wrote and he sung the wedding song. And it is a gorgeous expression of love between two people on their special wedding day.
I didn't know that.
Audience, if you get
That's
a chance
cool.
to listen to that, Paul Stuckey, the wedding song. You will be impressed and amazed. Yeah.
Another one that came out that kind of caught me off guard too. I knew it was in that era. I didn't realize that it came out in 71 was Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves, Cher.
Oh yeah, Cher. Yeah,
And that's a great song too. Like you're just
definitely.
like got a great beat, and her voice is just incredible.
Oh
But
yeah,
just another one that we just take for granted, right? And then all of a
yeah.
sudden you see it there, and you're like, oh boy, like
Great
yeah,
song by Cher. And of course, Sonny and Cher got their start back in June of 1965 with I Got You Babe.
yeah.
And here she is, early 70s now, 1971. Um, Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves. What a great upbeat song there. She's, even to this day, she still looks great.
I recently read a quote, and I don't know how true it is. It was online, but it was a picture of Cher, and
hmm
a reporter, somebody asked her if they felt that she was getting a little old for rock and roll. And
Really?
she looked at him and said, "Go tell Mick Jagger that."
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah,
That-
you don't tell Cher that. Come
no,
on, right? Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. Oh,
yeah.
boy.
There's just so many. I mean, you must when you like you said when you go DJ and you're doing maybe more of a retro thing, you must get a lot of requests for a lot of stuff from 1971. Just
Oh,
looking at the list,
absolutely.
like
No
you could do
question about it, Dave.
literally a DJ party and call it 1971, right? Because
Oh,
you'd have
no
more than
question
enough
about it.
content.
Absolutely. In fact, couldn't squeeze all the songs in 4 hours or 5 hours of dancing from 1971. All the different transitional types of music, both in pop and country music too.
Yes.
So, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
could easily fill 4 or 5 hours just from the music of the year 1971.
I got to think that John Denver, Take Me Home, Country Road is one of the more popular songs you get requests for because such
Yes.
a crossover for him that year, right?
Yes. Yeah. John Denver, that's his signature song amongst many great artists, the late John Denver, but his signature song, Take Me Home, Country Roads, that really goes into the heart, especially, I think, Dave, not so much the cities, but rural farming areas. Take Me Home, Country Roads. And that says it all.
It
John
really does,
Denver.
doesn't it? Yeah. And like you said, the country at that time too, there was, I think it's back to what you said earlier. I think there was just such a crossover that year, all this music mixing together so nicely, right? Like you said, there was a country was coming through. There's the Perry Comos of the world. There's Led Zeppelins. There's, Jackson 5. There's all this, Al Green. Like it's all just there as this huge, I don't know what to call it. It's a masterpiece of music, really, 1971.
Oh, indeed. And with all the different new acts coming on board, as we'd mentioned earlier, it really created for the listener just a tremendous realm of different music, but great music. And it was definitely the pivotal point in music in 1971 in that focus, that area where music would be 1971 to take us right up to today's current top 40. Different elements, different degrees of music, but 1971 was truly the pivotal year.
I wonder how much of that music, you and I have had this conversation many times before, that we could take back. We could probably pick 5 songs out of here. Brown Sugar's a good example, and look at its basis of where it came from, its roots and blues and rhythm and right. Like, I mean, a lot of this music probably started from that early 50s era, right? Of music, and it grew out of all that. And maybe at that era, that was the pinnacle of what we were seeing. Now, I think that's debatable on a lot of fronts, but I mean, there's so much there. I'd hate to be a new band trying to break a record in 71.
Oh, absolutely.
You would have to be so damn good, right? Just to get in there. Because you're like, I'll just wait till 72.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 71 was for new acts, be it the bands, female solo singers, male solo singers, pop, country music. There was so much happening in the musical world in 1971 that paved the way for the different changes down the road. Look at the late 70s. 1971, it was kind of a prelude to the disco era.
Yeah.
And on and on and on and on. Yeah, so it's...
Here's an interesting question for you. I wonder if you look back now at what year sold the most records ever. I wonder if 71 would be right there. You got to think so, right?
Oh,
71,
absolutely,
72, because
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say 1971, definitely.
Because you'd be buying the 45s, you'd be buying the albums. Like the albums were really coming in then too, right? I mean, obviously Zeppelin 4 comes out, everybody's buying that album.
That's right. That's Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, but I mean, just look at, you've got, like we talked about earlier, you got George Harrison releasing a double album. You got John Lennon releasing an album. Like, I mean, not the Beatles anymore, but those record sales are going to, if you're a Beatles fan, you're probably buying all 4 albums from each member.
Right.
So,
right on,
Dave. Getting 4. So I just wonder how much that cause and effect on that music industry was at that time. And
incredible. And the record companies did so well. And here again, the Beatles created their own record company, Apple Records, as we mentioned earlier. So it's exciting times. 1971, it really was a pivotal point in music. Okay, so we have Joy to the World, Three Dog Night, Song of the Year for 1971. It topped the charts for multiple weeks, and it became one of the iconic songs of the year. And what this song really did, it resonated with audiences globally, not just North America, but right around the world. Three Dog Night, Joy to the World. And so here we have audiences listening to Three Dog Night, Joy to the World, and it really does showcase the band's talent and the songs. They really, well, they have an infectious medley. Wouldn't you agree, Dave?
Yeah, totally, 100%. And you're gonna find this funny, but one of the songs I remember vividly
Mm-hmm.
when I was probably 71, 71, 72, 73, a really young kid walking to the old Port Dover Arena
Oh,
for
yes.
Saturday afternoon and Saturday night skates. Every time you would hear Joy to the World.
Wow.
It was just in that playlist.
Yeah.
It was in that playlist, and I always loved it. I always thought, I think I gained probably more musical knowledge skating laps at the rink, because they always had good tunes on, and it was
Right
it was
on.
always fun that way.
Mhm.
So I think that was one of the songs that I remember hearing. I
Mhm.
remember hearing Maggie May too, believe it or not. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of
Rod
lot of
Stewart.
good music from that era that as a kid growing up that you were constantly listening to, right? You were hearing everywhere. And that's
Mhm.
another point. I think we kind of forget in this day and age, everybody's got their earbuds in.
Exactly.
And when you were at a social function like the rink,
Mhm.
everybody heard the music.
That's right.
Everybody was kind of having fun together, right?
Mhm.
And
That's
not that
right.
there's anything wrong with today's society and the way we use our music. For sure, everybody has their reasons, but it was a
Mhm.
different feeling to the music back then.
Yes. Absolutely. 1000%, Dave. 1971, again, was a critical turning point in our music history.
Crazy, incredible year. I don't know if you got anything else to add, Randy, but I could go on all day about 71 because when we open this list and we start looking,
Mhm.
it really makes you appreciate how lucky we are or were to grow up in that generation and have all
Exactly.
that music open to us, right? It's just all those storytellers. Amazing.
Absolutely, Dave. I agree 1000%.
Well, Randy, why don't you finish it up? Take me home, country road. What do you got?
Well, there's all kinds of good themes from songs from 1971. Here's one I forgot, Dave.
Oh,
Have you ever seen the rain? Well,
there he is, folks. Up to his old tricks again.
there we go. CCR. Good stuff.
I didn't even see CCR. CCR. Say that 10 times fast on here, but that's another band we could just go into.
Hmm.
I mean, late 60s, early 70s, they changed the landscape again, right?
It did. It really had it all, and it made some serious statements, not only in the lyrics, but in a lot of new talent coming on board and starting their careers in music and being highly successful.
Just when we thought we were free and clear, I got to remember, and I don't know why this one popped up. I think I had the 45.
Mhm.
Lynn Anderson, Rose Garden.
Oh, yes,
Remember
Rose
that?
Garden.
I never
Yes.
promised you a rose garden. I
Rose
don't know
Garden.
why I remember that very
No,
vividly. And there was so
great,
much. I
great
mean,
song.
Aretha Franklin had 3 or 4 hits that year. Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, you just cannot understand the diversity in that year of the music to appreciate what we were able to live through. I don't know. I don't know if you'll ever see it again. I got to be honest with you.
Dave, I think you're right. No, we will not see a year in music like 1971 ever again. Pivotal driving force in music.
Man, thanks for doing this today, Randy. I had so much fun. I love when we get to sort of break down a year and run through these artists because I think it opens up so many memories, eh? Like great
Yes,
memories.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I really appreciate you sharing your Carpenter story. I didn't know that story, folks. He even held out on me on that one. I didn't know that one, but that's okay. I understand. It's understandable.
Yep.
Thanks for doing this, bud. I can't wait to see what we're going to be up to next month. Maybe we'll find another year and pick it apart.
Sounds good, Dave. And I've enjoyed talking and working with you today on the year 1971. Truly a pivotal year in music history.
Take care, bud.
Have a good week.